All right, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome. It's fabulous to be with you today on this webinar. And we're going to take a look at 3 mistakes parents, teachers, and therapists struggle with that keep them stuck in troubling emotions. I'm really grateful that you're joining me on this adventure. What I notice, especially in these times, it's very troubling, right? There's a lot of extremes happening. And so that's what this is all about, kind of condensing and making it clear, hopefully a little more clear. So I'm going to expand my screen, and you all can make sure you're muted, your video will be off, and that just makes it easy to follow along with the webinar. So I really appreciate your presence. I know that people that get eager and interested in understanding their minds and their emotions are really wanting to be of service, and you're often taking care of people, which is where I got that parents, teachers, therapists. So many people who've worked with me or been in my workshops or been in my programs are those who are in service to others, nurses, caregivers. Sometimes we're taking care of our parents, but it's a powerful position, and we seem to want to do it well, like a lot of investment in doing it well. That's what this is really all about. Okay, let me make sure I can be in the right spot, everybody. Okay, so Byron Katie. Most of you probably know who Byron Katie is, great mentor and teacher of mine. And she says this: argue with reality and you lose, but only 100% of the time. What a statement. You may have heard that. Argue with reality and you lose, but only 100% of the time. So what I intend to do with this webinar is these 3 mistakes. I'm going to count down from 3 to 1. And it's all condensing down into looking at what an argument with reality actually is. But especially when we are carrying worry or stress or frustration or discouragement inside of ourselves as we meet other people, relationships, families, conditions of life. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. Any place that you feel unhappy or irritable or worried, and even about the whole world. Like where I am right now at the time of this recording is there are skies blanketed with fire smoke and everyone's supposed to stay inside. It looks like the world is a disturbing place. Everything's tanking, right? And to be able to hold that and sit with it and still apply inquiry and be with our open minds is really quite remarkable. So more importantly, even than just looking at these mistakes, which I like to say, there are no mistakes. Byron Katie, if you know her, will say there are no mistakes, not really. But looking at these barriers to peaceful thinking in our minds and breaking them down so we can avoid just staying on the loop, stuck in them. So pen and paper handy. I am going to give you a couple of short exercises to follow along during this webinar. So you can have a writing device, and I like to think of it as meditation, just like the work is meditation. At the end, definitely Q&A with me so people can come off mute and we'll stop the slides and have a chat. So I look forward to that. All right. So I like to say here, you are in the right place. If you understand there's something important about quieting the mind, in fact, you're probably really interested in that. And if you know the work of Byron Katie or self-inquiry in any form, very interested. You're aware of the power of thoughts to change the mood, how we're relating to somebody, a sense of reality. You know the influence of your mind and how you're living your life. It seems to have an incredible role, right, in how we are. like the conversation we're having with reality. We've also, many of us, studied how to question these belief systems. You've done the work. You've done the work of Byron Katie. You're familiar. And even many of us are trained in, we're therapists, we're healthcare workers, and we are deeply trained academically in aspects of health and wellness. So we might work with people a lot, including our kids or our families. And so everyone, you want to mute yourself. That's helpful to make sure that we have really good quality sound. Yay. I'm going to see if I can do it from my end just for a quick second. Let's go like this, because I know sometimes you can't always see how to mute. Okay. All right, everyone. So, and we want to, there we go. I love that you're here. So great that people are just popping on. Wonderful. All right. Back to the big screen. Okay. So even though we have so much training in that, and we're looking at our minds, and we're interested in mindfulness, and we maybe even know how to meditate or have a meditation practice, it seems like there's places within us where we feel trapped or confused or deeply concerned. And you can hear it or get the feeling of it in your body with thoughts like, you know, my kids need to have a happy life and they aren't happy. I have too much responsibility. I'm exhausted. I need to fix these problems. I can't seem to find my own center. It's just noticing whatever stress or disruptive emotional life is, but we have it, we're experiencing it. So noticing that, even with a lot of clarity and training and advanced degrees even, I find over and over again with the people that come to do the work or come to access, you know, mindful self-inquiry. And I hope that these three barriers will help sort of condense or just give you some good assistance with that, because I've watched them within myself. So in case you've never met me before ever, a little bit about me. My name is Grace Bell, and I don't want to go on about myself much long at all, but a little tiny bit about myself so that you have a context about what I am doing and where I come from. I'm in the 12th year of a private practice business, being a facilitator of the work of Byron Katie, and I work with people all over the world. It's amazing. Virtual retreats and workshops and courses, and I've done lots of in-person retreats, and that is not happening right now, as we all know. So I get to do this, and it is the most amazing, fulfilling work. It's just remarkable. If you dial back to 2004, I marked that point because I had come a long way and done lots of modalities and therapy and training and got an advanced degree, a master's in applied behavioral science. But I was quite anxious and bored and would flip around emotionally with people. I had young children. It seemed like I had still some anxiety or not quite certain about the world. A lot of things not so extreme anymore, but a lot of disruption just in my daily life. So before that, I mean, I had read everything I can get my hands on, from the Christian literature I was raised with, mystic literature, and then I moved to whoever looked like they might know what's going on, something peaceful, something about the mind, and still had a lot of uncertainty. Such an avid workshop attendee. I was one of those people like you might be, with your side table has, bedside table has tons of self-help books on it, or books about the mind, and had done a lot of work with that and even been in group therapy. But at 2004, I came across a book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And about 4 months later, I signed up to do the school for the work with her. So when I was there, It was one of the most amazing workshops I've ever experienced. And those of you who have done the school probably agree that when I was there, I had a sense of realization that none of my education or experience or training or life history or figuring it all out or gathering information could make a difference until I learned to be with myself. Which is, I know we know this with silence, really, with the mind, and question what I was believing to be reality in the moment. My thoughts would tell me this is reality constantly. Reality is not friendly. Reality is dangerous. Reality is just boring. Reality is uncertain. So there was a seeking, which I really related to, because prior to that, in my 20s, I had an eating disorder, and that was like just grabbing, eating, consuming, feeling desperate and panicked, wanting information is how that began to translate once this sort of disordered eating had relaxed itself. So I just saw, when I was in the presence of Byron Katie and doing the school and the exercises that she had us do, that my thoughts created my moods and my attitudes towards my world, my responses to everything. So I needed to unlearn, and I got what it meant to unlearn. When we question our thoughts, the result is that we return to a natural state of being, or peace and happiness. So I like seeing what is meant by the don't know mind. And I was really excited for a while on that workshop high. So we all know probably what that's like too. And then there was real life. But one thing I really noticed when I left that first school for the work is that one of Katie's staff people actually said, this is the real school, your life. Your life is the real school. Taking 9 days out of a human life and doing trainings and being in a big group and having everything taken care of you, that's one thing, but really being in your life is the school. And I would remember that and notice, very important. So I love that it became so, I did not know that I was going to facilitate the work of Byron Katie from that point forward, but fast forward a few years later, that's what I was doing. So that's enough about me. Let's get back into this training. Just sharing that with the history, because then this practice of the work has been so fundamental and meaningful to me, and working with other people, I continue to learn. Even though what the work of Byron Katie is, that form of self-inquiry, is just over and over again, 4 questions and turnarounds. But wow, the depth that can bring is remarkable. So, as mentioned, many of you are probably familiar with the work of Byron Katie, or you do some form of inner inquiry, or you just have questions. So we'll be looking at this, even if you know you've done a lot of work, to see what could be a barrier, because I found these within myself. So, super common, quote unquote, mistakes, right? Let's start with the number 3. I call it riding the should train. So this is really about listening to and believing the voices, the chatter, the talking, the communication, even if it's not in a clear voice, that is taking a stand for or saying what should or shouldn't be happening in reality. And the mind runs that. It just runs it constantly. I was shocked when I first began to meditate and then do the work of Byron Katie. Slowing down, noticing what I thought. There was a constant judge in my head about everything. There is still a talker in the head about just about everything. It's either there's a slight or a big, massively big problem with everyone, everything. It's just the way of it. It's kind of the mind doing its survival thing. But helping identify the process of it, breaking it down, is super useful to me. So we see, we have the experience of whatever's happening. There's that person, especially because of a caring people that we are. There's the person in our lives, client, student, kid, spouse. We see the pain that someone is in, and immediately I'm also in pain, or we see the pain that we're in. We conclude very quickly that there's a problem. It's almost instant. I believe that what I'm seeing is reality. It's funny how the mind does that. This is all of reality. And in my head, there's a voice that begins running, making a list of should and shouldn't about what I see. I love that this prompt, what advice would you give your perception of reality? That's on the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, which is a way to identify what it is we're believing about the moment, about that person. Because I find that's extremely strong. Even if you don't use solidly the word should or shouldn't, it's like noticing I don't want it to be like that, or I do want it to be this other way that it isn't. So I feel stress about this person's situation. It's literally on my mind. The people that are in our lives, the people that we care about, the people that we're sometimes have a career or paid to work with. So those processes look something like this. They shouldn't be falling behind. She shouldn't suffer. They need help desperately. Or something's wrong with them. He should, eat, drink, smoke less. That's like the addictive process. We look at that. I would have that all the time, of course, because I had my own eating issues in the past. They shouldn't be the way they are. They should calm down. They should do their work. He shouldn't be upset. And what I noticed, like we're saying what shouldn't be without there. And you could even add into this what's going on in the world, that like the fires shouldn't be there. The air quality shouldn't be the way it is. I can find that today myself. And what happens when we do this, we usually have, this is kind of a very simple way to look at it, but there's two primary choices that the mind runs. The first one is to fight it, tackle it, solve it. Go into the mind and start to solve it like it is a problem, so now we're going to solve it. And the second one is to ignore it or stay away from it or become hopeless or lay down on the ground. So, example, fighting with what is. When my kids were young, I often had the thought that they should see that the vacuuming needs to get done. This seems sort of mundane, but I would have it. I would be like, I would feel the sense they should see it. I shouldn't have to remind them. So completely on the should train, like riding it at 120 miles an hour. So I'm going to make it different. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to change the situation. I'm going to pack my suitcase with all the change tools I've got, and I'm going to get to work, and I'm going to problem solve and work with all this stuff to fix it. It's very aggressive when you really think about it on the inside with that fist. I like the way the fist, tight fist. So we often feel attacking, angry, irritated, furious, biting, mildly or greatly. It doesn't even matter which one it is. They're both stressful. That's what I really notice. So just aware of this, and also nothing wrong with any of this, riding the should train in a way. It's just that we get stuck there. That's what this conversation is about. The other option, reaction number 2, it's kind of like that fight, flight, or freeze that we all know about. The first one is fight, and then this reaction number 2, freeze or flight, kind of fit into the same thing. I'm ignoring, I'm hopeless, I'm despaired. It feels like I can't win, so I feel like I just want to give up. It's so terrible. I'm too tired. I won't. I'm full of sorrow, passive, lethargic. So we feel like sad and depressed and needy, longing, upset. Sometimes even with the work, if nothing's true, why bother even speaking the truth or sharing honestly or asking for anything I want, I don't get what I need. So it's just looking when I'm on the should train, I'm either resisting and contending, like I'm in an argument that way, or I'm in an argument still if I'm feeling like I'm disappointed, incredibly disappointed and full of despair. I'm still against what is. I'm even against the despair and the aggression. So both of those states are stressful and painful when we're against them. They cause such suffering within. You get really stuck in them because I don't like it. And when we feel that stress, we don't always remember to inquire. I don't. Use the work of Byron Katie, which is powerful. And I'll say a little more about Byron Katie's work in a minute in case you're not familiar with it. But it's just wondering, what's true? How am I seeing reality? We forget that we're assuming our thoughts are true. We really start believing what we see is all of reality. It's everything. You know, that person is not vacuuming, or the world is going down. It's terrible. The environment it's over. And we don't see that we might be missing something in that despair or in that aggression. So I love that Katie says this. Seeing reality doesn't mean you're going to be passive. Why would you be passive when you can be clear and have a wonderful, sane life? Seeing reality means that you can act in the kindest, most appropriate, most effective way. So, riding that should train. We're way down the track, busy with the should list. You don't even realize it, but just notice, just like, am I shoulding? Am I shoulding on myself? Am I shoulding on reality? I think I first heard that long, long ago. But we're justifying, defending, focused on the details of the suffering, focused on what's missing, you know, not questioning that what I perceive can't be all true. I mean, there's no sense of trust or faith present. We might worry if I don't think that the suffering in that other person is true or in myself, then, you know, I won't try to fix it. If it's not the full reality, won't that mean I'm a neglectful parent or a bad caregiver or a therapist without empathy or an uncaring teacher? I mean, just good to notice it's sort of fighting for this stressful stance that it's either hopeless or aggression is needed. So good to notice that the mind, I kind of think of it as afraid to give up solving the problem or explaining or justifying or defending. But all those things are fitting in the should train. That's what I'm talking about, the should train. So this brings me to really mistake number 2, orientation number 2, conversation number 2, that what we're meeting is dangerous. It's great to notice we're assuming that what's happening is dangerous, basically, frightening, threatening in some way. And I found that even with the wanting the kids to vacuum when they aren't. That if I really sit and ask myself, why am I against that? And I think it's going to turn out badly if they don't ever clean, you know? It's danger oriented. So that sounds more extreme, but let's just go into it. And it's like we're turning up the volume on the fearful experience. Like our conversation with reality it's scary. Big world. I just want to get under the covers sometimes, right? It's very stressful. But I just want to also point out, like, danger, danger, big stress, but that it can be a very small sense of threat, like in one compartment of your life, in one arena, one relationship that's really bothering you. Once you remember it and start to think about it, or it keeps you up at night. So, or when we think about something like the grand cosmic conversations that we have with life that all of us do, like, wow, it's so weird that we're here temporarily and I'm going to die someday. I wonder when I'm going to die or what's going to happen. If you start to go on that, like, I wonder, what is it like aging and knowing that something's going somewhere where I won't be here anymore on this planet Earth? Oh, and then just the fear of that. It can be strong when the mind is very identified with the body. And it doesn't seem like there's a trustful ground of being underneath. So just noticing. A little adrenaline or a lot of adrenaline can kick in, and that's a sign that something wants to get back to peace. Like it's okay. It really believes something's threatening. So a challenge with holding the danger in your experience is, you will often say inquiry doesn't apply. Like I may not even think to inquire. I'm having an adrenaline rush already, which is okay, that happens. But then I just gotta like run. I just gotta get away. Or if I'm believing that reality is dangerous, I'm just simply lost and despairing. So a similar response to riding the should train. So really helpful to notice that when we're feeling a lot of danger, just see this in myself and in people that do the work over and over. I'm believing this is really a threat. It really is. And even if the mind kind of kicks in and does its little, well, maybe it isn't, maybe you don't have it right, let's go quickly to the other thing. It pops out of inquiry. It's trying to get too quickly, in a way, over to non-inquiry. It's irreversible. But we can ask ourselves, I love this. Is this about the body? Is it about survival? Is it about believing in loss, death, pain, illness, health, dying, or security? It usually is when I'm believing in danger of reality. It's got something to do with these things. It's got something to do with surviving, in having a body. So I love this idea that Byron Katie and others, sort of thought leaders, will talk about, which is, what does it mean to believe? I become a believer. It's running through my system. I'm believing, I'm just repeating, watch out, in a way. That's the feeling of watch out, look out, hopeless, scary. So when we're afraid, I notice too, sometimes people get afraid of fear. They don't, like, we're scared, and then we get scared that we're scared. I don't want to be scared. I hate it. It's so uncomfortable. It's unwelcome. Fear is totally not welcome here. I can't handle these feelings. I don't want to review this memory. The thing's over that you went through that's very, very difficult, but you hate thinking about it. I'm against even thinking about it. So that's like, call that being afraid of being afraid, with the recall or the memory, or looking at something with deep inquiry. Also, we'll think, I'll just do it tomorrow. It's urgent right now. I just got to get out of this bad feeling now. What can I do right now to escape or change the channel? And not that there's anything terribly wrong with that, because in a way that's got some wisdom to it, but this can turn into an addictive process. For me, it was like I would eat, like a binge eating zone, or smoking, or avoiding out by watching stuff on TV, you know? So it's just when it tips over into pure escape, and we really thought that the thing that we were with was urgent. Opposite of welcoming. It's the opposite of welcoming something in. Being okay with what is. All right, so, oops. Make sure I'm in the right place. So what I like to say is, danger, and how to work with it is about noticing. It's not about figuring out what to do to work with scary, scary things. It's about noticing just a little bit. I like this picture because it's like, it's okay. You're not losing your discernment. If you're not a believer, it doesn't mean that you walk right across the freeway unaware and like, it's just fine for me to walk right across the freeway. It doesn't matter. Or walk into situations that you just don't have discernment for, or with your kids or your students or your clients, like sort of think they should just go do XYZ and then they'll be fine. No, we're not like sort of swinging into sometimes I think of that as like, lack of discernment. You're not forgetting everything about what you're seeing. We're not in denial. It's just about noticing and being aware of believing in fear. And that's even okay that we do that, because what's the reality? We have fear as human beings. If a thought is persistent and repetitive, the good news is we have the capacity to question it, and it can shift. Everything's in motion. So I want to do a brief exercise. All right. Consider one situation in your life that you found to be frightening. So it can be mildly of concern or terrifying. It's okay if it's in the past or it's something you feel afraid of in the future. Kind of odd, but we can have anticipatory fear. That is usually based on something that we've experienced in the past, by the way, but just noticing, I feel afraid. And if you're not even sure what to pick, I want to give you a couple of examples of my own. I just sat down to do this when I was thinking about gathering up and doing this webinar. I notice fear, when it's unquestioned, it does lead to suffering. And you see that funny little yellow line, just in case some of you are wondering. That happened at the very beginning when I just opened up this particular webinar today. Something or other made a little scrape on the slide deck, so I have no idea. But luckily, it's okay that that's there, and maybe even it's perfect. It's like, yeah, there's a little crack in perfection, and isn't that always true? Mediocrity or not so perfect or not the way we like it. Oh, and now it's gone. Awesome. All right. So one thing I noticed in my own sitting is I just sat quietly for a moment in silence, like doing this anew, for like as if for the very first time. Noticing this fear, sitting with what am I afraid of, like a very open-ended, as if I'm asking the childlike, innocent part of myself that's aware, what am I afraid of? And for the first time, I was only 8 years old, in 3rd grade, this little boy named Ernie, we'll never forget his name, isn't that funny? Ernie started following me home often, and it kind of creeped me out. And then he gave me a ring. It was little peace signs, because this is the late 60s. It was little peace signs all hooked together in little circles. And it was a large, probably adult ring. And it was put together with 2 pieces of like school paper, stapled all around the edges. And he delivered that to me. I can't even remember how, like it was in my desk or something. And I was like freaking out. And nervous, and it was really funny. I just suddenly saw that, and it was like, oh, moment to be healed, like somebody kind of being like coming towards me, and I feel like I just am kind of hooked up as being extremely introverted and just being frozen about what to do about that instead of like welcoming. And that was at age 8. So it's fun to notice old things moving themselves in place. Then another fear I had was my father dying of cancer in my 20s. Gripping fear, felt terrifying, felt like a whole journey. He had leukemia. Very painful, held that for many years as the worst thing that ever happened in my life, my father dying. I loved him so much. He was a very kind person. He was a teacher too, he was a professor. And also job loss. About 15 years ago, before I began to fall into doing this work as a facilitator. Divorce, job loss, no income, scarce money, feeling abandoned, felt terrifying. Sitting on my couch in the same living room that I'm in right now, terrifying. So these were huge, frightening moments, and I could write down a few more. Sometimes that's an interesting exercise, is just to write down what are the most frightening moments I've ever felt. Now, if the list gets too long, you can suddenly overwhelm yourself. But this was just 3 to give you an idea, and that something still revealed itself for me. So just set your one example aside and we're going to come back to that. So just one. Like I like picking my dad died. And we're going to come back to that for this exercise. We'll do a little healing inquiry journey work on that today. So why we care so much about fear is that fear in itself is not wrong, because look, it exists in reality. Of course it isn't wrong. There it is. You fight against it, you're going to lose, right? There's an argument against fear that happens. But what I notice about fear is we get very fixated on these perceptions of danger. Like there's an ever-present fear energy. And I like this painting. It's dandelions, all painted in a purple. But you know, dandelion seeds, they just blow away in the wind. They're scattered everywhere, and it can feel like that's what's going to happen. Something can assert itself into my life. Something can happen with the people I care about or I'm responsible for. Things can change. It's bad. It's like bad, bad. So even my kids aren't learning to clean, like that example I gave to you. It's like, would feel inside my body like, this is terrible. And in 2 seconds, you know, my students need help. My clients aren't changing. The world is going to hell. It's feels very, very alarming. Like there's a huge fire alarm happening, which is perfect that I just used that right now, considering there are fires going on. A burning process is happening. So I care about studying danger. It became very, very important to me to study danger and my reactions that were fearful and how they showed up. Like that, when did I feel terrified or even mildly worried? This is important. These are important to take a look at, because the mind would get trapped in these places, like just looking and looking, believing that they're true without a question, assuming the current danger, assuming this is going nowhere good. And that can just have this huge defensive feel towards reality, like in that person, whether it's a small moment or a big one, very defensive feel, you know, or like I'm a victim of reality. So I just want to share a little personal story with this. So interesting. This is recent. So this is funny. So I have a very, very dear friend. She lives in another country. We can't see each other right now because of the pandemic. We arrange visits every so often. And we were just about to have a visit when the pandemic hit last March at the time of this recording, 2020. So no more visits. That's not happening. And we usually have these wonderful weekends, and she is a person who's deeply into her own self-inquiry and the work. And we know each other well, which is a very dear thing to have, people who are in the work. So time goes by, probably a month or two, and we probably only see each other every 3 or 4 months at the most, but we spend deep time together. And then it tends, you know, off we go, and then we get back together, and it's maybe a very in-person relationship. But when it looked like things were extended in this pandemic, we made arrangements to meet on Zoom, just like we all are right now. And so we connected once or twice, and then that sort of faltered. And I remember reaching out and saying, texting, hey, do you want to get together on Zoom again? You want to have another conversation on X date? And, oh, sure, that sounds good. And then when the day came, she texted, I'm just going to write in my journal tonight and go to bed early, but we'll get together soon. And this happened just maybe once or twice more, some sort of fleeting experience like that. And I woke up one day thinking, I wonder if I upset her. And part of me is like right there, wait a bit, Grace, is that true? I don't know if this is true, but I wondered if I had said something or done something. My mind started to go to work on what had happened in the past and conversations we had previously had where she might not want to talk to me anymore. And I have a top theme song called I've Been Abandoned. I noticed that, and I've actually noticed that with a lot of people that I work with. It's like fear of abandonment is deep. And my mind woke up one morning like half an hour earlier than I usually do. And the first thought in my mind was, gosh, this is really weird. Like, wait a minute, we haven't talked in like 2 months. That's kind of strange. I know it's not as fun on Zoom, but I wonder if I said something that bothered her. And I was wondering, and I wrote her an email and said, and made my guesses, even like, I think I said this, remember that conversation we had? I think you might have been, it was sort of disturbing because da, 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 da. And of course I got back an email saying, that is not true at all. What struck me, it's wonderful to have a partner in the work because I could check it out, just check it out, this thought process, and recognizing that the mind creates problems that are not actually there. So I was afraid of this, and it wasn't true. So, brings me to the work of Byron Katie. I love many of you are probably totally familiar with it, and even people that do the work of Byron Katie, but this is my yellow card that's still in my wallet from 2004. And the first question is it true? So that thing that you thought was frightening, see that situation that you wrote down? You just take that right now. So I'm going to use my father died. Let's look at just this first question. Is that true? Sometimes it can seem like questioning danger is neglectful or rude, like if somebody else is having the problem and we're saying, is that true? It's like we're challenging their sense of reality, and we're not taking their plight seriously, like a child who's crying. Usually the image of the future is very dire or dismal or horrible. But so I have this moment with my father in that first school for the work, doing the work on him dying. He died. Is it true? And then I was like, I'm not exactly sure what death is. I know his body isn't here anymore. I get that that part is not true, but I don't know if that, I don't know what that even means exactly. We're all so curious. No one knows, what happens next, and where did he go, and is there consciousness, like, and how does that show up, and all the mystery of everything. And there's lots to say that it's very intriguing and wonderful and infinite and lots of possibilities, but it doesn't even matter. It just was wonderful to find I couldn't absolutely know that that was true. Crazy. So I love that Katie says this: pain, anger, frustration will let us know when it's time to inquire. So that thing that you feel misery or pain or suffering about, and you're a believer of that thing, that's the way it happened. It's terrible. It's wonderful to just sit with the first question. Keep it simple. Is that true? Is what I'm thinking about this, is my story about this, and the meaning I'm putting onto it, and my interpretation, is it true? Is it all true? Is that the reality? Can you find that that's the full-blown reality? Is all the meaning that you think about it, is that true? Is it all true? I just love the question. It's a huge relief, because I find that mind is actually temporary and fleeting and dissolvable and repetitive. And there is, by doing this work, and we'll get to do one more piece, which is just fabulous, that all is well. I mean, we're here. How do we know it's not well? Couldn't it be just as true that it's well? All is well indeed. But we're alive, breathing, being breathed, and being thoughts. Like we'll say we're being breathed, our heart's being beaten, and our thoughts are being thought. It's not even personal. But habitual thinking about what is frightening is very debilitating. And having that conversation with, oh my God, this is terrible, even about people that we work with and clients. It's wonderful to sit with somebody and they feel horrible about it, what's going on in their lives, but you just have that little space between their story and your meeting them and sharing with them and holding this might not all be true by being with somebody. So this brings me to the third mistake, quote unquote mistake. It's a frightening thought that most of us carry, and it's under the surface of all the fears. And that is, there must be something wrong with me. And that includes, there must be something wrong with my mind, with my thinking. I can't get my thinking to go the right way. I'm doing the work so that I fix my thoughts. Ooh, this can be tricky. But we're reacting to reality by judging ourselves, sometimes very harshly. So we're going to do something with that thing that you found was frightening, that seemed to be outside of you. We're going to do a little piece of work on that. But this is where I have noticed I myself came into the work, and where a lot of people want to show up when they begin to do the work, or even somewhere along the way, is I want to do it on myself. I'm the one that needs to be fixed. What is good to notice is you're still having an argument with reality then. You're arguing. Where that argue with reality and you lose, but only 100% of the time. The opening quote from Byron Katie. So we get lost in suffering when this is happening. So many of you are familiar with the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. It's the way to identify all the harsh, frightening, terrifying, sad thoughts. And when we begin to do them on ourselves, it looks super general. It just can go on like no one else. Like it's just so intense. It goes on. More judgmental and more critical than we are towards anyone else in the world. And especially with those of us who are really have big open hearts. We care about these other people, parents, we're parenting, we care about our children, we care about our students and clients. We're holistic practitioners, we're nursing people. The judgment to the self is the biggest of all. It's the biggest of all. At least I just find that over and over again. It's very interesting. So it seems looming in the foreground, like no wonder we want to do that first. Challenges to this are that you feel shame and embarrassment and regret and humiliation and guilt, and then you want to separate because you just feel like you want to isolate. That's what I always wanted to do, just get away from all of humanity, or take me out, I don't even want to live. I mean, it's very despairing, very separating. You feel very separate from everything else and like there's nothing here. So that shame, you know, I especially when I had a eating disorder, I mean, all those binge eating episodes and then self-starvation kind of episodes, those would be something I felt so embarrassed and so guilty about. I would never want to tell anybody. I mean, just like, oh, keep it a huge, huge secret. So of course I felt incredibly separate. I also love that somebody said this to me once, who is a facilitator of the work, that doing the work on ourselves, like questioning our own thoughts and questioning what was going on over here with myself, is like looking into the sun, and you get very blinded. You get just blinded because your investment in changing so that then you can be happy, changing your own mind so that then you can be happy, is so strong. And you just think you really do need to change in order to be happy. So I'm determined to change reality when it comes to the way I am. Reality is intolerable and unacceptable. I really have to change. If you saw a film of me doing what I do, you'd all agree that it's terrible, and I didn't react well to that person, and I'm not doing well with that client, and I don't do well with my family life, whatever. And of course I start creeping on the should train, or I just jump on the should train about myself. The list of shoulds and shouldn'ts is about me. So why is this so important of this, to question this thought? There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my mind. It's because it's an endless loop of self-improvement. I mean, there's no rest here. There's always something underway that we need to get fixed. It's something's missing, something's too much for us. And I like to say, we need us, we need you, the world needs you. we are the ones we've been waiting for. I am the one I've been waiting for. Like having that perspective, it's like almost seems shocking. Like, what? No, I can't be the one. Wait, I'm not. So get to do a really interesting exercise here. So take your example, that thing that happened that you really just think is terribly frightening or even mildly frightening. It's okay. It doesn't even matter the level, you know. There's that thing that's happened. Seems like it's happened to you. Seems like it's happened out there in reality. My father died is the most simple way I would put mine, my experience. My father died. Upsetting, very upsetting. So, fantastic way to look at this. I found very, very helpful. How do you see yourself in response to this situation? Go back to the situation. How do you see yourself, your behavior, your feelings, your words, your thinking, your perspective when that was underway? How did you see you? And my guess is it's probably not very favorable. Here's what I mean. So I'm looking at my father died. I notice, this is actually a question, it's a sub-question in number 3. So the 4 questions of the work: is it true? Can you absolutely know it's true? And the third one is, how do you react? What happens when you have this thought, when you see things this way, when you're thinking the way you're thinking? And a sub-question here, like just being able to sit with that, is, how do you treat yourself? How do you perceive yourself? How are you imagining yourself in this difficult situation where fear rose? I found this fascinating. My identity at that time, I am the one who needs help. I can't do it. I'm abandoned. I'm lost without my dad. I'll suffer forever. I can't handle this. I don't know how to live without him. I need his advice. I'll miss him so much. I have no help right now. There's nothing to fall back on. I won't survive. No one will ever give me money for no reason. My dad was the only one who ever gave me money for no reason. No one will accept me with my foibles and faults, except my mom. Okay, my mom's beautiful, so sweet. I can do this life wrong. I don't know how to do it. So just notice, even if you're sitting with your kids and they're not doing, you know, the right thing or whatever, you have a problem with them, or your students who you now have to teach online and it's not good, or, you know, you used to teach them in person, or clients. It's like you just see what starts to run about you, like, oh my God, I'm not enough for this. I'm not enough for this. I can't do well with this. It's all versions of, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. So who would we be without that story? Who would you be without the story? It's almost like, what? It's an amazing question though, without that identity. And I love that the mind can imagine, because it's imagined all the other stuff. The negativity that it's easy to imagine and like warn you about. Well, it can imagine this too. Question 4, who would you be without your story of yourself in the middle of the situation? I love this picture on the slide because it is a group doing the morning walk at a Byron Katie retreat right here in my city of Seattle. So we're all walking in silence, looking and practicing, who would you be without the story? Who would you be without the story? So without the thoughts about yourself in that situation. And I even like to say why I have this as number 1 for the biggest mistake that we make is that our thoughts about ourselves are what's in the way. Like it's holding that, our interpretation of who I am, instead of that I'm the perfect person for this, whatever's going on right now, I can meet that. We don't even think of it that way, right? So it's, what if reality is safe? What if reality is okay? What if reality is going to unfold as it does and it's not horrible? And I don't need to know anything else. Like, you know, it'll just be, oh my God, I need to know more. I still have this. I'm like reading books all the time. Ooh, that's great information. And that's okay too, because that's part of reality. But that it's critical and I need it and it must happen in order to survive or do well or be okay or give love. No, not necessary. So I love that Byron Katie says this: own all the beautiful parts of you. So many of us, we just deny it. Reality is you're good and there's nothing you can do about it. And every thought opposing that feels like stress. Those of you who like to get high, try this. And I love that she says that right there, because often when we feel bad and there's nothing we can do about it, you know, when we think reality is I am bad and there's nothing I can do about it, I've been trying, is we want to get high in whatever way we do it. We want to escape. We want to do our addictive thing. We want to grab or withdraw, feel despairing, feel aggressive. So one final piece of an exercise here. This is such a great exercise. We're really talking about using the capacity for the mind to answer questions, to let it drop into the body. So from the neck down, feeling what it's like to not have a thought, to not interpret the world or ourselves as missing something or too much. So right now, wherever you are, it's just like, take a big stretch. I'm stretching too. And stand if you want to. And breathe. And just feel. What if you, so listen to this kind of open question as a meditation. What if you did not have to stick with your special routine or do your practice or do your practices? And I'm not saying you shouldn't, because sometimes they're so wonderful. You just enjoy them so much. But what if you don't have to do a special form of therapy or get trained in trauma recovery? Like that's what I was thinking. Oh, I need to get training in trauma recovery. Or have some sort of major strategy in order to help other people or be with other people around us? What if change for us is actually to not focus on what's negative or difficult or absent, missing? What if we don't need to manipulate or control or make anything different? It's strange for the world of behavioral science and my academic training in a lot of ways, coach training and lots of the work that we've all done, which is all useful. There's nothing wrong with it. Found it's also useful. But what if imagining our foibles and emotional difficulties and arguments with reality, arguments with people, believing in the world is dangerous, and they're not problems to be fixed or crushed or dealt with or made war with. We're just not arguing. What if we were not arguing with who we are? I mean, I just find that to be an incredible relief. And I love noticing any emotion I've had, fear, anxiety, even those are part of reality. And if I could just let them be there, they tend to dissolve and come and go. Mind is very fleeting. So what I've even noticed in my own, like my addictive behaviors, addictive thinking really, is they're like thunderstorms and weather, and it comes and goes, gets very intense. I like that Byron Katie calls them seizures of believing. So I'm just in a seizure, and that's the way the mind works. Kind of funny. It's a funny way to work with it, but I'm having a seizure of self-doubt, right? When we're doing that, I notice I fail to notice that every worry about my kids or my family or spouses, or every concern with clients, concern with students, every disruptive problem I've had with other people, Every fretful or angry thought is temporary. I am just not aware that it's all temporary. Okay. So just holding that. Who would I be without that thought? And I know I'm not giving much silence here, but you can take that with you into your day. Take that with you into your life. I think the mind is drawn to it. You know, it's like, it doesn't become a thing you have to do. It's just, who would I be without my story of myself? So in summary, I like that I said shouldering on myself. It's shoulding on myself, but it does feel like it's heavy on your shoulders. I saw this the other day and I didn't even go correct it. We're shoulding on ourselves or shoulding on reality, vigilant about danger, danger, or worried something's wrong with us. These three areas just seem to repeat, and it's great to notice that they're happening. They can become barriers to sinking into a more clear sense of reality. I love that Heraclitus, Greek philosopher way back, those Greeks that had great philosophy running, said the only constant in life is change. And it's good to notice that thoughts, even if they seem like they have stayed the same, they die down. Like every single night when we go to sleep, they die. So it's not dismissive of tragedies and shock and hard times, but we move through them without forcing, without fixating on them. So looking at the way we've seen this, and I realized a lot of my training was in this, in academics. There's a book called 100 Years of Psychotherapy and the World is Getting Worse. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but interesting, and no need to be alarmed by that, like that it's not working, but holding the thing in mind that only telling our stories and going over what's happened is useful. There is a place for sharing stories, but questioning. So if we do that and we're assuming that something's wrong, or in the mode of diagnosing and fixing problems, believing that people are wrong and broken and troubled, including ourselves, it's we're holding a basic assumption that's worthy of questioning. It's I like this that's come out. It's believing materialism. The mind and the brain is the center of consciousness, and our thoughts are personal, like they come out of our own individual brains, instead of the other way around, that our minds are just filters for a greater consciousness, and we can't assume that we know what's real. We're just seeing in the moment of reality. We're just seeing a moment of reality through our particular eyes in this particular body. So let's turn this, if we turned it around, let's turn it around. Like these sort of assumptions. It would look like this. We would assume, as we open up to who would I be without my story, that something is right with the people in our lives. How amazing. That doesn't mean that somebody isn't coming to you and saying how much they're filled with suffering, that we just sort of dismiss, oh yeah, great, yeah, they're suffering. That must be right. No, it's you're meeting with staying connected. We're not in denial, but we're sharing the journey of what's happening here. Is there something worth inquiring into? Can we feel what it would be like down in the center of silence and well-being, even though this story seems to be underway? I love noticing the turnaround corrections instead of mistakes. 3 corrections that are openings. These are openings into self-inquiry. Isn't that funny? So people are right. They're mending. They're peaceful at the core, resilient. So the shoulding leads to something that is open-minded. The danger leads to love. There's something wrong with me leads to just being human is okay. We're aware that the center of consciousness is a mystery, that our thoughts are not personal and we're not really creating them. And they're not the center of everything either. Isn't it funny how the mind really gets centered on, like, I'm the center of everything. That's everything I see. So We're identifying the contents of our minds and questioning the truth we're assuming is real when it's stressful, and we can find freedom. It's an enjoyment of the don't know mind instead of an alarm about the don't know mind. I love Pema Chodron says this: when we touch the center of sorrow, when we sit with discomfort without trying to fix it, when we stay present to the pain of disapproval or betrayal and let it soften us, these are times that we connect with bodhicitta. With it, it's like freedom, with peace. It's okay that everything's there. What if it's okay that everything's there, and noticing that it gets to change? So, I just find that inquiring, what else are we going to do? It's like we believe our thoughts or we question them. So I find it's much more exciting to question my thoughts and more interesting. So Katie says this: sanity doesn't suffer ever. Can you eliminate war everywhere on earth? Through inquiry, you can begin to eliminate it for one human being, you. Do you really want to know the truth? All suffering begins and ends with you. Oh, pretty amazing. And that means with the people that we work with, like our children and our parents and families and spouses, the neighborhoods we're in, the communities we're in, the states we're in, the countries we're in. And without being alarmed or worried about this, or like it's a heavy weight of responsibility, but those clients and everyone we meet, your only job is to have the suffering begin and end with you through inquiry. What a relief. I just find that, I find my experience of that is that this is actually happening by practicing the work. I just keep coming back to the work. It became not a should. I would just go, oh, here I am, ready to do the work again. Who knew that I would be interested in self-inquiry? It wasn't like, you better do it, because that doesn't really work. It just interested in it. Other avenues don't seem to open up as quickly to the peace available here and silence. So, who would you be without your thoughts? You'd be love itself, of service, able to be with anyone and anything that's suffering, who is suffering, a presence of healing love no matter what's happening. I find this to be the case. It's amazing when people do this. They just report the sweetest and most amazing things happening, and that your life matters in however small it seems to you. Those people that you connect with, it's powerful and important. Presence of love. Loving yourself. Questioning the thought. Is there something wrong with me or my mind and how I'm reacting? It's all okay, all okay. So I'd love to share a little bit about the year of inquiry, and I'll still sprinkle a few things about these 3 barriers amongst this, but this is why I became a facilitator of the work. And actually, I don't even know if I wouldn't have planned to be, it just turns out I became a facilitator of the work. Seriously, I mean, never would I have imagined that to be the way things unfolded. But I just kept noticing that sharing inquiry, being a facilitator of the work with others made such a difference for me in my own life. And then I get so excited doing sessions with people. So fun, just trading facilitations, doing facilitations, dissolving the disordered thinking, and also disordered eating, disordered repetition of anything. Disordered thinking allows things to slow down and stop. I see self-inquiry freeing people to become change agents in their lives without trying to be change agents. That's what's amazing. So much efforting about, changing, but you just wind up becoming that. So sharing with others this feeling of peace, of the mystery of what is, just learning and growing from other people. I really noticed I couldn't do it alone. And what's funny is, even though I knew the work was so beneficial and I'd had that profound experience at the school for the work that I went to so long ago, it seems like now, I still would not do the work as a regular practice. So that's what I want to share, the benefits of the year of inquiry, but really the benefits of practicing inquiry. So no one ever has to sign up for any programs. Basically, doesn't it come down to that? But it just might be fun. So what I recommend is that you find the joy of doing the work. I mean, I just have found that in myself. And one way I do it is to share it with other people. So you can even get a little group. Sometimes people have done like a program with me or a retreat, and then they get together on their own separately. Just doing the work of Byron Katie, which is 4 questions and finding turnarounds. I love this picture. I love that Katie says, the work is the direct way to orchestrate your own happiness. Amazing. So this picture I saw on the internet long ago. I cannot at all remember where I saw it. Images of some kind. I probably was Googling something, and this thing popped up, and I wrote to the person who owns the picture and asked him, told him who I was and what I did, and we had a little exchange and asked him if I could use it. And he said, absolutely, I love it. And the person who I was speaking with, his father took this photo, and he was the man on the left in the baby picture. He was now all grown up and like 60 years old or so when I was talking with him. He said, he's the baby on the left, and his cousin is the baby on the right. And this was taken in the 50s, or like 1958 or something like that. And his father, who took the image, loved photography and died of brain cancer. And he said, in exchange for using this picture, I love whatever you're doing with it. Sounds wonderful. That I support you using this photo. Would you donate to a brain cancer foundation? And it doesn't even matter which one. I think there was like a choice of some. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, because my grandfather died of brain cancer. And anyway, we just had this wonderful exchange. So there's a little side story about the fun of that. But what a great, the direct way to orchestrate your own happiness. Same reality, different reaction, right? So